We feel, therefore we are. The non-conscious directs you. We need to build that connection that actually beauty and health go together. Before you even know what you look at, your body's already responding. They now know that, living in modern cities, looking out your window, you're more likely to get headaches. They directly related. 30% of American urban infrastructure is car parking. Turns out we need to walk. If you don't walk 4,000 steps a day, we now can predict your increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's.
Welcome. What follows is an interview with Ann Sussman. She's an architect and the president of the Human Architecture and Planning Institute, or the HAPI. Together with Alexandros Lavdas and Vernon Woodworth, she just released the Routledge Handbook of Neuroscience in the Built Environment. This is an incredibly important work because it shows the link between the built environment and neuroscience, or how our bodies react to buildings and cities. So without further ado, let's welcome Ann Sussman. Welcome everybody, and welcome Ann. Great to have you here.
It's wonderful to join you, Ruben. I love your commitment to working and building more beautiful places.
Yeah, actually, we were talking about this before, that your work is one of the pillars of, what I'm doing, because I need to base basically all the urban interventions and architectural interventions on a base of reality, a base of truth. And that is found in research, your research. So maybe can you tell a bit about the link between what our intuition says and the research that you're doing?
Well, it's so fascinating, really, because we're animals. And I think in the 20th century and even earlier, there was this sense that humans were above nature. We're above it. We're a different thing. We're not animals. We think, I think, therefore I am. Well, sorry, Descartes.
Yeah.
That's false. We're animals. In the 20th century, they didn't really think about that too much, definitely in architecture and planning. They just kind of ran away from the emotional experience. And I think you can understand why. The 20th century was fantastically traumatic. Certainly the first half century, and with 2 world wars and everything, and the rush to build this modern world, and plastics was really, really took over. And they didn't look at the cost of that. And they didn't also really, really explore animal nature the way we need to. That is really, really fascinating. I am a licensed architect. I didn't get my license till I was in my 30s. But when I went to architecture school in the 1990s, there was no biology requirement. There was no psychology requirement. But you're designing habitat for a primate.
Yeah. Well, there still isn't, by the way.
Yeah, I believe you're right. There still is not. And that's ridiculous. And what's terrifying to see, I am in Boston, and up until recently, or maybe still now, but with things changing, Boston's a big biotech center, and there's just a lot of biotech research that goes on here. And so about 10 years ago, I ran into a company called iMotions, and iMotions, based in Denmark, with also headquarters in Boston, does eye tracking, facial expression analysis, galvanic skin response. They just really look at multimodality, they call it, all the different ways of understanding how the non-conscious experience is directing humans. And it's really fascinating. But to get back to what you said in the beginning, the 20th century basically ignored our human nature, assuming we were above it. But we're not, we're of it. And I think in the 21st century, there's even TED Talks about this, how we have an emotional brain that thinks. We're an emotional animal that thinks. And the quality of our emotional experience, the experience you have when you see beauty, directs what we'll do. And that's what's fascinating to me. You have to really understand emotions. And also the quality of emotional experience determines your well-being. It links to your longevity. Yeah. Who knew? If you're stressed all the time, that's going to impact your longevity. If you're relaxed and happy, you're going to have a different, you'll heal faster. It's all connected. So that's what's so important about your work, I think, at the Aesthetic City. Aesthetics is just not a thing for the upper classes. No. The aesthetics is about all of us. It's about well-being. It's about bringing people together. And what's really interesting to me too, it really connects to all ages.
Yeah.
Beauty really matters. And yeah. And there's so much we could talk about, but yeah, it is, we call it a paradigm shift. It's just a new way of thinking about emotions first and then thinking. And realizing one time, not that long ago, I went to an architectural conference and I talked about emotions, and a man came up to me, probably in his 40s or 50s. He said, "Emotions, that's girly," and that's in a way how he was taught. But but I think certainly the business world and more different disciplines are not thinking that way anymore. I think a year or so ago, I heard a quote from the lead designer for the Lincoln car. He was told to come up with a new design for Lincoln because of COVID. And what I heard him say was, "Okay, here's the new design. When you get into the new Lincoln," this is the quote, "you'll feel hugged by your mother."
Yeah.
So, I mean, car designers, I thought they were talking about acceleration and braking rates. No. They're talking about how hugged. And there was even a 2006 article in the Wall Street Journal talking about car front ends. The title of the article was "Why Cars Got Angry." And it was all about how the front end of the car will determine, whether or not the person buys it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, there's a lot to go in there. So first of all is, we're talking about this paradigm shift. So what is this paradigm shift exactly? And later I want to also get into, for example, the stress response that our environments cause. But first, maybe, what is this? What is this paradigm shift?
I think the paradigm shift, there are lots of it. The paradigm shift is, there's lots of different ways. I think there's actual paradigm shift in psychology, even in psychology thinking. I talk about it in this book that came out in 2021, this idea that the non-conscious is directing you. I mean, Freud talked about the unconscious too, but now we realize, oh no, it's not just Freud, it's everything. The non-conscious is totally directing you. And that's a huge paradigm shift. And the unconscious relates to your animal nature. And that's what's fascinating too. Before you even know what you look at, your body's already responding.
Yeah.
Before you're even consciously aware. In fact, iMotions once explained to me, the biometric company, that your pupil dilation, your heart rate, your breath rate, your sweat glands are already responding before you even consciously know what you're looking at. What?
Yeah.
Well, and when you think about that, you realize it has to be that way because we evolved in a hugely dynamic environment. The savannah, a lion could jump in at any moment. We had to be responding instantly. And there's this great quote, "The past is never dead. It's not even past." That past is in us. And so we're responding like we're still on the savannah. In fact, when you're born today, even in the 20th century, even in the 19th, Mother Nature thinks you're on the savannah because the body and brain you have hasn't changed for 40,000 years. It's just the same.
And now these bodies are transported into a world of, concrete blocks and cars. What does that mean for how our environment leads to, for example, stress?
Yeah, it doesn't fit us. Yeah, they've done the studies already. Arnold Wilkinson at the UK, he's done the studies that repetitive parallel lines are increasing in buildings that we're building, and the brain isn't hardwired to process repetitive parallel lines. We're hardwired for natural shapes, fractals, leaves,
So there's a link between the aesthetics of buildings and what we can process or have trouble processing, and what environments lead to us flourishing and what lead to us being stressed out.
Oh, totally. Oh, totally. And they now know that, living in modern cities, looking out your window, you're more likely to get headaches. They directly relate it because there's repetitive parallel lines are increasing in the tall skyscrapers, and you're more likely to get headaches.
Wow. And
now, what's so interesting about when you look at traditional architecture around the world, in Asia, in Persia, all over, there was always a repetitive parallel line. It was kind of contrasted, there'd always be curves with it. So it would be kind of the repetitive parallel line thing wouldn't happen. The arches when you think of in old Greek or even Roman architecture, you see the repetitive parallel lines are negated by having the curve shapes with them.
Yeah, so more variation and more, the disturbance of those endless, because that's also, if you look at, for example, classical buildings, they have the verticality of the pillar, but that's the interesting thing about classical architecture. The columns aren't perfect cylinders; they're curved like a tree stem. So you always have emphasis. So there's always a bit of a curve, and then you have the horizontal element of the entablature on top, which breaks it off, and then you have all these layers, and then if you zoom in, there's all these moldings with more detail. So it's not just straight up and horizontal.
Right. That's so fascinating you said about traditional and classical architecture. As you approach it, you see more and more detail. And it turns out that's actually what you need. That when you study walkability, what you learn is the non-conscious directs you in walking. And you need to see more and more detail to make you most easily non-consciously walk forward. Modern buildings, you walk towards them, there's less and less, you don't know where to look.
Yeah.
Glass buildings, where do we focus?
Yeah.
And that non-consciously sends the brain. It's so fascinating to me. I heard about 2 years ago, I met this American guy who was 60 years old, and he said to me, I went to Venice. And then he said, this is the exact next sentence. He said, I walked for an hour and a half. And his face, it was in a state of still awe. And I was in the States talking to him, and I'm thinking like, oh my God. Because in his 60 years living in the United States, he never had known there could be in an urban environment that would invite him to walk for an hour and a half. But there's a reason biologically why that happens. Not only are there not cars on the streets in Venice, but there's consistent detail that keeps him walking. And then you could get into the complexity of walking. It turns out for a primate, walking is hugely difficult. It's not easy for a primate. There's a reason our brain is 3 times bigger than a chimpanzee's. Why? We figured out to walk. And then figuring out to walk allows us to do all these other things. But walking is done with the word they use is automaticity. What does that mean? Non-conscious awareness. If you have to think too much about it, you won't do it. That's why the guy could walk an hour and a half in Venice without even thinking about it and without even getting tired. What? How could that be? Because it was naturally feeding him the non-conscious subliminal stimuli he needed, which you're not going to get crossing a highway. you know,
I think that's one of the things I always see as one of the biggest problems in urban environments, and that is these endless blank walls, these endless glass facades, these long stretches where nothing happens, which there might be an amazing wide footpath that is like amazing with trees and seats, but if it's just a very boring stretch, it is not giving that that stimulation you need to want to walk there.
Yeah, to want, but here's what's so fascinating too with this paradigm shift in neuroscience that's happening too. Understanding, it turns out we need to walk. Now there are these studies I've been recently reading that if you don't walk 4,000 steps a day, that's 2 miles a day, they now can predict your increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's.
Oh, wow.
So it's the beauty. It's not just beauty and aesthetics. No, it's actually not getting dementia.
Yeah.
Because it'll make
city,
you.
Yeah.
The walkable city is about health for all ages. And so it's not just, it's actually, we need to build that connection that actually beauty and health go together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And walking go together. And feeling happy and so walkable in Venice, it's actually better for your body.
Yeah.
And you're going to meet people. And psychologically, as a social species, that's what we're also built to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting. So because I heard that there's now also research being done in what happens when you approach a building. So is it like eye tracking studies where they look at how your patterns of what you look at in the building changes when you approach a building. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can do that with eye tracking. You can see that's the amazing thing. Your eyes move 45 times in 15 seconds. What? Of course they
Mm-hmm.
do. And the
Yeah.
first 3 to 5 seconds, a researcher at 3M once said to me, and the first 3 to 5 seconds a human looks at anything, it's exactly like a monkey. That's the first 3 to 5. It's non-conscious. It's gender, history, culture, language. That comes in after. But the
Yeah.
first 3 to 5 seconds, well, I mean, we share what, over 90% of our DNA with monkeys. It makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah. So then then basically there's a very strong argument to make that our environment has objective qualities that influence us, and that design and even, well, beauty can have some objective elements that influence us. And this almost, yeah, you would almost say that there is an objective part to beauty in that case. Is that correct, you think? Like, what is your view on that?
Well, yeah, but I think that's what we could really work on too, together. That beauty and
Yeah,
well-being and longevity go together.
yeah,
And what I've
yeah,
seen in my lifetime, I'm a baby boomer. I'm getting old here, but what I've seen in my
hmm,
lifetime is now beauty is only for the wealthy.
yeah,
The
yeah.
private schools in my
Beauty, yeah,
town are beautiful. The public school has a 160-car parking lot right next to it and is modernist. The private schools are traditional buildings, beautiful with the parking hidden. Which school is the 14-year-old going to feel more at home in?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and that is a big problem, that beauty has been, well, I think I'm not sure whose quote this is, but it's not mine at least, but it's, beauty has been stolen from the masses and sold to us as luxury.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because it used to be, that's so fascinating you're saying this, that used to be noblesse oblige. You know,
Hmm.
Carnegie, big wealthy people would build beautiful public libraries for everybody and they'd be beautiful. We forgot that. And
Yeah,
now
yeah,
it's been cycloned off, and there isn't the giving that there used to be. And then there's
yeah,
been this
yeah,
stratusphering that now we have just beautiful spaces just for the wealthy and the uber wealthy. It's like the wealth and equity in my lifetime. It's incredible what's happened. The middle class in the United States has been smushed.
hmm, yeah, yeah. So it's very unfortunate, and this new patronage, or these multi-billionaires are not the patrons like Carnegie, even though their
No,
wealth
no,
is countless times higher. So this is actually
no. It used to
something.
be right. It used to be right, right. But I
Yeah,
think it's all kind of complicated. I think we have to look at the role of war, the role of industrial revolution with cars and cars taking over. The car centrism really dominated American development, particularly in the Midwest and the West Coast, but even on the East Coast too. And now, I don't know if you know this, 30% of American urban infrastructure is car parking. 30%, and 95% of the time a car is parked.
is there any research on how people experience cars? What do we think when
Yeah,
we
I
see a
think
car?
there is started about that. I think they know that the car companies study that, and I think what happens in a parking lot, your brain is just, and we've got I could send you one little research thing we did. This was a pilot study of people walking down two streets in Boston, one with more cars than the other, and without even realizing it, their sweat glands were more engaged. And
Wow.
and I thought they would look at the traditional buildings on one of the streets, but they didn't. They looked at the cars even when they're parked. So non-consciously, our brain is seeing a car as an animal, and it could be a lion ready to pounce. I mean, because that's what we're wired for, right? So
Yeah.
what's so fascinating to me is how in Europe, they are really ahead of the United States. I don't know if you saw this. I think about a year or two ago, Paris announced they're removing cars from 500 streets.
Yeah. I think it's a great move. I mean, they are transforming Paris.
And not only that, it makes it. I see this too when I went to Oslo in May this year. Oslo, the city center is car free. It's much as it encourages international business.
Yeah. As we moved from the last age to this one, you have talked in your book that we're entering the age of biology. What does that mean?
Well, I stole that from the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The OECD announced that,
Hmm.
that we're in this new age of biology, I think back in 2012 or something. And it's all about how we have new understandings. I believe in 2003, we sequenced the human genome. Who
Hmm.
knew? You
Yeah.
know, when I went to architecture school, they didn't know that 86% of your DNA and your cells is the same as a zebrafish. Now they know that.
Wow.
We
Yeah.
didn't know that. We share DNA with trees. What? And
Yeah.
so we can understand we're connected in a way. I think in the 20th century, there was not only all these wars, but this rush to just embrace this new tech and run with it without understanding its impact. And so we build these crazy buildings, not understanding, wait a minute, they don't fit us. My father's first job in the 1960s was making plastics. Now I go to the beach in Boston and pick up plastics. I mean, the plastic was the revolution, right? Remember
Yeah.
the word in The Graduate, the movie? Plastic. It's the future. Not knowing it doesn't fit us at all. There's now microplastics in our brain. We just didn't realize. I mean, the revolution is
Yeah.
understanding we're part of a coherent.
Yeah.
It's part of a coherent thing here, and everything's connected.
Exactly.
And we kind of in the 20th century thought we could be above it. No, we're not. We're of it.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that is what I like so much about that quote, and about that worldview, is that everything is part of a larger holistic whole. Everything
Yes.
should be holistic, and architecture
Yes.
should be holistic as well. But it is still stuck in this 20th century materialistic worldview. But I think there might be even there is one thing that perhaps elevates, because it's not only biology. Perhaps there's also perhaps like a cultural aspect and a climatic aspect, because you'll have different architecture in the Sahel region in Africa compared to I don't know, Germany compared to Malaysia. So there's that, and you have of course also different kinds of ornament, but still under all that is this foundation of um, of that we all like ornament, we all like this detail, and we like natural shapes because we are of nature. And that's the first thing. It's like the stem of this tree we need to take into consideration. And then you have um, cultural expressions of it, I see. But how do you think about that cultural aspect of
But
that
we're
lies
not.
on top of this natural?
But we're not. It's not as important as you think. I think what got me into this when I was like 12, my parents took me to see the
Hmm.
Taj Mahal in Agra,
Wow.
India.
Yeah.
And here I am, American kid, walking, and I'm blown away. It's like, wait a minute, something was very confusing to me. How can I feel this is so beautiful, so enticing? Why do I want to walk to? I don't know the
Yeah.
religion. I don't know the language. I've never been in this time zone. Something
Yeah.
makes no sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something made no sense, and people weren't talking about it. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense because it what it does is it externalizes my internal brain architecture. Nature has
Yeah.
preset we need to see to be at our best. Bilateral symmetry, top, middle, and bottom, rounded form, and also in some ways a face-like facade. That's what's so interesting
Hmm.
too. Um, what really got me into this, and what I recommend you read, is the Nobel Prize winning neuroscientist Eric Kandel wrote
Hmm.
a book called The Age of Insight.
Mm.
I think it was 2012. The Age of Insight. And what he explains is his passion for art. And he explains how he became a neuroscientist. He realized he couldn't get a Nobel Prize if he just studied the human brain. We have 86 billion neurons, too many. So he studies the neurons in a sea slug, which only has 11,000. And then he really starts understanding, how neurons work, how the brain architecture works. And then in his book that he writes after he's won the Nobel Prize, he explains how art works. And one of
Wow.
his main points of his book is there's one main thing the human brain's hardwired to see, and that is a face. That it turns out there's a figural primitive eyes, nose, mouth for the brain
Hmm.
already developed in the fetus's
Wow.
brain by the third trimester in utero.
Wow.
So it's
So,
not surprising that I felt so connected to the Taj Mahal. It has that figural primitive in it. It suggests a face. There are
that's
multiple
incredible.
windows.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
and
see
it's not.
this in so many buildings. I was recently in Antwerp, and you have these beautiful Art Nouveau buildings there, and many of them have these very face-like facades, even more than regular buildings. But I think it's something you often see in traditional buildings in general, that you have more recognizable face shapes.
Not only that, well, it's interesting being from Amsterdam. It's fascinating when they use tourist promotional brochures for Amsterdam, even when they do conferences like they did Green Build a couple of years ago at Amsterdam,
Yeah.
the major. And did they put a green building in? No, 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 no. They used the traditional canal architecture.
Yeah.
Of
It's
course they
always there.
did.
Exactly.
They showed the architecture they're no longer building in Amsterdam. Wait a minute, guys, because the people putting together the tourist brochures or the brochures for the
Yeah.
conference are the marketers, and they
They
know that
know.
if they put in the
Yeah.
skyscrapers being built in Amsterdam, that would not make an American pay $2,000 to go to the conference.
Yeah.
They're going to put the
It's yeah.
charming, world class, and that's what's
Yeah.
amazing to me. How
It,
even the Dutch don't quite see the contradiction.
mhm.
The advertisers know they're not going to dare put up.
Exactly.
They'll lose their
Yeah.
job if they put up
And
an
yeah.
image. Yeah,
Yeah, the modern, but that's very interesting. The marketing aspect, and also you already talked about a car dealer. So about how the world of business knows this already before the architects do.
it's just it. It's very upsetting that the world of business doesn't question evolution. It embraces it, runs with it.
Yeah, yeah, because they know that, and I think that, well, we were just also talking about that it is kind of the most unifying aspect about us humans, that we react biologically the same to certain things like beauty and beautiful buildings, and companies use this not only, well, in how why we buy a car, but in creating the most addictive apps and create ways that are really using our biology to keep us hooked.
Yes, yes, totally,
Yeah.
totally. Oh my God, I can send you an image. I sometimes take photographs of supermarket aisles where they have all the cereal boxes. The cereal boxes usually have big smiley faces on them. They have to. They're not going to
Yeah.
question. And one time I
It's
remember
yeah.
a couple years ago, I realized I had all these cereal boxes. I'm not even eating the cereal. I realized, oh, I must have been lonely. So I was buying the cereal boxes because they had smiles on them, the big faces. So the cereal
Isn't it also
boxes,
like, yeah,
they get people the way the people designing our cities and towns don't. It's like the gap is like, but I
yeah.
think it's because it's the spreadsheet. It's this
What do you
architecture's
mean by the
driven.
spreadsheet? So the
Well,
just that everything has to be cheap nowadays, or what's your?
no, I think that architecture, I didn't realize this, but architecture's made by developers and real estate owners, and they're driven by spreadsheet. When you do a development, I once tried to be a developer, you have to have a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet has to show that if interest rates change, you'll still, be able to make money. And it's all spreadsheet driven. And on the spreadsheet, there's nothing in there for beauty. But when they're designing the cereal boxes, they really put in something for, well, will someone be attracted non-consciously to this box?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's what's the gap. So the cereal companies like Kellogg's, they're in the 21st century. The car companies are the 21st century. The real estate developers, the architects are not in the 21st century. There's this kind of really
yeah,
big gap. And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
actually quite unhealthy. And even the company I've been working with for about 10 years, called iMotions, to do eye tracking, they were bought a few years ago by Smart Eye. Smart Eye is based in Sweden. They
Hmm.
sell all the biometric tools to the automotive industry. So when you go on their website, it's really impressive. Their website, there, it's amazing. When you go on their website, the first thing you learn about is, understanding how to understand the expressions of the driver.
Yeah, and that's so fascinating because it's there is more and more research showing what kind of architecture people prefer. For example, they're doing visual preference studies, like the National Civic Art Society in Washington D.C. with their brutalist versus classical federal architecture, where you also, I think, did a study about to compare where people look at. I did my own.
It's behind me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. I did my own in the Netherlands, actually, with Dutch buildings, and basically replicated the same results. I took pictures of real modernist buildings and also a picture of a real traditional building, and then I turned it with AI into a traditional building, or the traditional building into a modernist building. And then I, with the same number of stories, with the same number of green, everything the same, but only the facade was different. And then I sent it to, Ipsos, a market leading firm in the Netherlands, research firm, to put this in front of their research panel. And of course, we saw an enormous preference for traditional architecture. So warm colors, more detail, more structured facades. And it is so clear, and we already know it intuitively. We talk with most people, they already say, I prefer this kind of building. So we already knew that people would prefer this, but just the sheer strength of how people prefer traditional architecture was even surprising to me. And then we also asked them other questions. So what exactly, what their thoughts were, what were you thinking while choosing between these pictures? And the most heard things were they didn't like dark colors, they liked warmer colors, they didn't like the stark minimalist big planes, they liked more detail, they liked more variation. So there's a wealth of research, but I think I really wonder what would happen if you would do a eye tracking study with these building pairs, because I think they're ideally suited.
We could do it. Let's do it. No, let's do it. You realize the unconscious response, the intuition is there for a reason. And it's not, it's there because of millennia of history behind you. No, it's very interesting what you're saying. It's very, very true. I think the other thing is, just like before you're born, it's preset. You're going to have water. You're going to have air. It's also preset as a social species. We're hardwired for attachment. Mm-hmm. So when I told you the story of the American guy going to Venice, he could non-consciously attach so easily that I walked an hour and a half, and we're hardwired for non-conscious attachment. So it's as important as clean air and clean water, and unprocessed food. Now we realize all the processed food we made in the 20th century is very unhealthy for our body. Yeah.
So what's the worst? Oh yeah, sorry.
Go on.
What is the worst case scenario that could happen if someone lives in an environment that is completely and utterly unsuitable for humans? What would it look like, and what happens to the people living there?
Well, it's already happening in America. We see it. We have lower longevity. We have, I don't know if you know this, 42% of the people are obese.
Oh, wow.
70% overweight. And that makes, that becomes a comorbidity, more likely to die of COVID when you have those issues. It doesn't really work.
And mental health?
But in a way, and mental health problems, loneliness. My generation, the baby boom, born between 1946 and 64, we're called the loneliest generation. Too much time in cars. We're not built to be doing that. But, you have to understand, in a way, when you look at human history, this kind of paradigm shift happens all the time. I mean, did you know, Ruben, that for most of the 19th century, doctors didn't wash their hands?
That's insane, yeah.
They didn't do that. Yeah. They didn't wash their hands. Yeah. They'd go from, an autopsy to delivering a baby without washing their hands. Because it wasn't until the 1870s they realized, there's microscopes. There's germs. Who knew? It really wasn't till you know,
Yeah,
the 20th century, that doctors, it becomes a requirement to wash your hands.
it's just
What? I mean,
incredible.
that's
Yeah.
absurd to us. Or just like when I was a kid, cars never had seatbelts. Are you kidding? I
Hmm.
stood up behind, my mom was driving, the first woman in her family to drive. And I stood up and hold her neck while she drives. No seatbelt, no airbags. And
Exactly.
now you have to legally, you can't sell a car without seatbelts now, but that's a paradigm shift. We'd be shocked.
Hmm. So,
It's a paradigm
yeah,
shift. It's a big,
how do we
but it's a
bring
new way
about
of
this?
thinking.
Yeah,
What?
how do we bring about this paradigm shift in architecture? Is there do you see a path to bring
Well,
about?
your
Yeah,
work.
I do my
You have
best,
to,
but
well, how did the American Revolution happen? You speak out, you write, you show there's another way, and you bring people together.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
then you make the link. There's a reason, the obesity, and then the new science about not walking in dementia.
that's shocking. But also the idea of the, let's say, the car suburb is so alien if you really think about it.
Yeah,
It is so unnatural. It has never existed. It is the opposite of how humans lived for millennia, for millions of
right.
years.
Yeah, and that's the issue, that we're not modern. But when you study the human brain and you study trauma, the idea of, forgetting the past, start from zero. That's what Walter Gropius would say to his students at Harvard.
Hmm.
Forget the past, start from zero. When he was teaching there in the 1930s, 1940s, he would say that in part because he was a World War I vet. He spent 4 years in the trenches of World War I. Now we know, I don't know if you know this, post-traumatic stress disorder wasn't even a word doctors knew till 1980.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean,
And they
probably
did.
the Vietnam War had something to do with it, or
Oh, of course. It came from
yeah,
understanding. They couldn't understand why the Vietnam vets weren't snapping out of it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that, and now, and again, that's another paradigm shift, that, there's a word for it. It's not just shell shock. No, it's your brain
yeah.
has actually altered. You can't visually take in detail anymore because so many of the cells have died for processing vision. So of course, Gropius's house is all blank, that he
Yeah,
builds when he's working for Harvard.
yeah.
Harvard hired a man who was mentally ill, not knowing it, but they didn't know. Just the idea,
Hmm.
the word PTSD, which is so accepted now, that's a relatively new word. Another paradigm shift. So I think your question is a really, really good one. How do you get the paradigm shift out there?
Yeah,
You
and
have to
also
be
you wrote a book. You wrote a book about it. About well, you published a new book with a lot of other
well.
authors, which
This
is also
mentioned
yeah.
this book here.
Hmm.
This one
Yeah.
mentions it's based on the paradigm shift. There is a chapter about post-traumatic stress disorder and designing for it, and about how it was
Hmm.
rooted in that. This book also talks about it, and I hope to be doing another book just explaining that, you know uh, we have to have compassion for our past. There's a reason
Yeah.
people wanted to forget the past, just like there's a reason
Yeah.
people wanted to embrace plastics. It seemed to
Yeah.
be cheaper, and cars without seatbelts. you know
Yeah.
but it doesn't really work. It has an externality that's negative. I don't know if you know this, more Americans
Hmm.
have died in car crashes since 2000 than in World War I and World War II combined.
Wow, that's
Over
incredible. Yeah.
600,000.
Yeah. It's. I mean, the numbers are staggering, and just every day, it increases, and it has directly to do with how we design our cities.
It's a
But
directly to do with how we're designing, and not designing our cities for a biology. But I think I once
mhm.
went to a lecture at Harvard about 10 years ago by an evolutionary biologist named Dan Lieberman, and he said, the male body evolved to walk 12 miles a day, the female 9. And he talked about how he never took the elevator at Harvard. He's only taking the steps. And so now we understand. So we were so raised in the 20th century to drive all the time, to be modern, not knowing it actually, oh my God, now they're seeing escalating rates in the United States of colorectal cancer
Mm.
with people under the age of 20. They've never seen
Wow,
this. And they're not
yeah.
sure why, but it may be connected to sedentary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sitting too much. I mean, it makes sense intuitively,
It
but
makes sense.
yeah,
It makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
We're meant to be walking. We're meant to be walking, 12, we're meant to be really walking. And, if you live in Paris, if you live in London, I think you can do that really easily. And you live in
Mm-hmm.
Amsterdam, you can do that really
Yeah,
easily. But the suburbs, no, you can't.
no.
It's too dangerous.
But could you tell a bit more about your new book, the title, what the new findings are, and what it has
Well,
brought
the
about?
Routledge Handbook, actually, Routledge approached us about two
Mm-hmm.
and a half years ago about this because they're seeing that people around the world are getting interested in understanding human experience. So we
Mm-hmm.
were able to draw together 50 people from 4 continents, 14 countries, to write 31 chapters just about how new understandings of psychology, biology, neuroscience, eye tracking, all these little things here show
Yeah,
where
it's page markers.
different
Yeah.
eye tracking studies are images of their eye tracking studies, just ways of
Mm-hmm.
understanding how the subliminal is directing architecture. And if you really want to design, you have to start with a subliminal experience exactly the way the car companies already are.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that's what's so, again, to not repeat myself, that's what's so shocking is how the car industries, they're there.
they already did it.
But they're using the science, though, not to support human health
Yeah, yeah.
because we're meant to be walking. We're meant
Yeah,
to be walking.
it's the funniest thing. So the car companies are using the brain science to let people walk less and be less to act more unnatural, and then the architects are not using the brain science to to help people live a more natural life. So the best would
And
be
that's the
if
other thing is how, in a way, the modern architecture fits the car companies. Because when you
yeah,
see a big thing of modern buildings, you want to jump in your car and drive. If you
yeah,
see a street of Venice buildings, you don't want to jump in your car and drive. It's too
yeah,
distracting. You want to walk.
exactly. And I mean, there is a place for the car. I mean, it's just like once you get to your destination, you should be able to walk around and not need your car further. It should be a choice. You shouldn't have to take your car just to get some simple groceries, like to get some eggs or milk, or to maybe walk to a fun little restaurant around the corner. And that might be unthinkable if you live somewhere in Phoenix, in I don't know, a faraway suburb. But if you live where I live in Amsterdam, I mean, within 10 minutes walk, or even within 5 minutes walk. But I live in a exceptionally dense neighborhood with a lot of little shops and restaurants. You have so much to do. There is, I think, yeah, within a 5 minute walk, there are at least 10 restaurants of all different kinds, from Mediterranean to sushi to whatever. 10 minutes, it's probably 100.
Right.
um, and then you have supermarkets like two within 5 minutes walk, probably even more. So it is absurd what you can achieve within a dense city where people live above.
But I think what
Yeah.
happened, though, I think to understand what happened, you have to understand history. And after the wars, there was just a rush to just embrace something new. And in a
Hmm.
way, when you study trauma, that's how trauma works. You want to forget the past, start from new. And when I tried to when I first worked in architecture, you're going to die, but I tell you this, the first thing they told me to do for a new development was to design the parking lot.
Yeah.
And
I
then
mean,
what I was supposed to design was the building, but the dimensions of the building, the length and width, were determined by what? The car parking below.
wow.
So
Yeah. Oh my
the
goodness.
thing
Yeah.
is, so cars don't have unconscious needs. Humans have
Yeah.
unconscious needs. Cars don't have the
And then,
unconscious
and
needs
even
for attack.
then, yeah, most car parks aren't even designed. They're just slabs with. I mean, they're designed by the traffic engineer to see where, like for traffic flow and where they can park and all the spots and where to enter, where to leave. But then there's no design of the actual thing. With there's you could have these grassy tiles, for example, to have water penetration. You can have trees. You can have like little stone walls, for example, to get something more than just a parking lot. You can almost like compartmentalize it, create little rooms. Um, But most car parks are just a slab of asphalt with some light poles.
Oh yeah, that's really
And
bad too.
maybe
They're very bad.
pure.
And also, but cars are toxic in more ways than that. You can also, interesting to study, the car interior often is off-gassing carcinogenic chemicals
Oof.
from the glue, from the plastic. I actually saw an
The
article
new
that
car
said
smell.
never sleep in your car. So we don't
Wow.
look
How
at
long
how
does that off-gassing take?
well, just even so, when I get into my husband's relatively new electric car, I always open the windows, even if it's 30 degrees. I said I can smell the plastics.
Yeah.
So even the car
Yeah.
interiors
Yeah.
are toxic. So they designed the car interior not looking at biologically that it's going to lodge in us. So it's
Yeah.
not just the
And
sitting, it's the breathing of the toxic air in the car.
yeah. Yeah. So what is
Whereas you're
your
supposed to be out walking. What?
yeah. I mean, we should be out in the fresh air. And by the way, that fresh air is also being polluted by car
Oh,
exhausts. So
yeah, car. Oh,
there's no escaping almost. But so is there any breakthrough new fields of study that is now happening that we should all know about? Like what is the breaking edge at the moment from
well,
what
I
you're
think
seeing?
I think we really need to understand the link between the importance of walking and movement.
Hmm.
That we're built for walking, we're built for not sitting all day, we're built for seeing each other when you're on a walking path, for that bumping into people you
Yeah.
haven't seen. It's so funny. I can either walk to my studio or drive to my studio. I'm in my studio now. It's about a mile from my house. It's not far from my house. And when I drive, it's just so much more stressful. Where am I going to park? Than when I bike or walk? It's so different. It's such a different experience.
Yeah.
It's such a less social experience. So you don't realize that the things that we ran to embrace in the 20th century actually don't fit us biologically. And even the cost, the carbon footprint of making an electric car,
Yeah. Yeah.
it just, it
Is it
just, it
truly
just
a
doesn't,
solution? Just yeah.
it,
I mean,
it doesn't
it's just
work.
you just replace one car by the other car, but things like maybe about the architecture again a little bit. So I have two questions. One is high rises. What does the research say about living in high rises and its health effects?
Well, I haven't studied that specifically. I just do know that, oh my God, this is amazing. There's often a wind
Hmm.
tunnel effect around a high rise.
Hmm.
There's the famous John
Yeah.
Hancock Tower, a building, the all glass building in downtown Boston. The wind blows around there. You can't hang out around there. And there's a cafe in that building. And
Hmm.
apparently it's a very popular, it's a cafe chain. And it's the least popular restaurant is in that building because you're not going to go in a building that doesn't, you know, you want to be where you feel cozy.
Yeah.
We don't look at the
Absolutely.
wind tunnel effect. We don't look at the fact that, yes, the Hancock Tower looks cool from a mile away or 3 miles away or from a drone view, but it's not cool up next to it at all.
Yeah, that's often what you see with many towers. Like in Rotterdam, they have built tons of towers. It's like our own little Dutch Manhattan, they like to say. But it looks amazing from a distance with all the the skyline with all the lights. But then once you're underneath the buildings, in many cases, it is terrible.
Yeah,
It's
it's
very
terrible.
alienating. Yeah.
And it's not healthy for you. And you actually could do a study now that having to enter one of those buildings may reduce your longevity.
I
Having an
really
office in a
wonder. Yeah.
brutalist building, it may actually reduce your longevity because your body's going to be going into a stress state. That's what's fascinating too. Oh my gosh, I'll send you this article if you haven't seen it. They now know that living next to a highway, they could predict statistically your lower longevity rate. Because it used to be, they thought, oh, you'll get used to
Wow.
living next to the highway and the noise. You don't get used to it. Your body is pushing out the cortisol, the stress hormones, and that's going to make you more prone to cancer, to other autoimmune disorders. They know that,
Yeah.
and they put all these often lower rent housing next to highways. Is that ethical? That should be a class action lawsuit. So the
Yeah. It's
cost
like
of that
Hmm.
highway noise, we pretend it's not there. It is there.
Oh, that's funny. In Amsterdam, there's actually a huge building. I think it's probably social housing. It wouldn't surprise me, as used as a sound wall next to a highway. It's this massive wall. It's literally, it looks like a, it looks like a wall. It is a wall, and it's to shelter the, and when you go around it, you see all those balconies on the other side, and then on the inner courtyards, it's quiet. But I guess they have a lot of sound insulation. I mean, it if you do it well, you can probably insulate. But
And you can never open a
if
window.
you exactly,
You can,
that's the point. You can never open a window to that side or have a balcony there. So
yeah, but
is it
here's the
ethical? I don't know. Yeah.
yeah, it is ethical, but here's the hope I see. I see people your generation and
Hmm.
younger, men and women, very interested in this. In the way in
Yeah.
my generation, emotions were never discussed. Nobody said they were stressed. Nobody said they're visiting a therapist. No, 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 no. This generation is completely different. And so
Yeah.
I think there's interest, and I think they can help make the change.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think so. I hope that listeners of this podcast will, well, talk about this and realize how important this is, and hopefully share this interview, of course, also with people who do something in this space, because I do think that the new generation is going to change things, because they're not stupid. They see what is going wrong. They see these horrific places. And anyone who has traveled once, to Europe or has visited such a city should at least wonder why can't we have this? But I do see. I mean, I was in Atlanta last year, or I don't know, actually this year, and I visited Alpharetta, and there they have built a wonderful little. They have upgraded their city center, and they have a beautiful little square now where children can play, walking streets, walking streets, just nice big sidewalks. They have upgraded the architecture, and it looks really nice. And that is in like the metro area of Atlanta, which is a huge sprawling area. And I just think that you can fix a lot with urban reparations, but the scale of American projects is just insane. But the funny thing is, here in the Netherlands, we are, or like in Europe, we are barely doing things better. We are building monotonous, alienating boxes with very little detail, very stark and uninviting ground floors. So that is like inner city developments, and there is no human skill. Or we build these kind of monofunctional, kind of like, let's say the Dutch suburbs, which are greener. They have cycling lanes, but there's nothing to be done there. So it's not like truly urban. You don't have shops. You don't have a. So it is still a form of sprawl. It's just more dense sprawl, I would say. And the places where they really try to create an actual new place with something I call center energy. The vibrance you find in the center, the interest you find in a natural center where people are drawn to, they're barely doing that, except for city centers or town centers where they're upgrading and densifying a little bit. But it's very, yeah, we're far away, but more and more people are interested. And well, we have our own course, Aesthetic City Academy, and we have, well, now hundreds of people participating, and there seems to be a real interest into that. So I think
I see
we
that.
have only started. Yeah.
I think I see that too, and we do have courses at the Human Architecture and Planning Institute. We also have
Yeah.
courses, and just showing how the non-conscious directs you. We need to understand. We can't just have the car companies using this science, because it's going to be killing us. We
Yeah.
need to be designing for walkability, especially with aging and diverse populations. Yeah. I think the problem is, I think what's happening in the Netherlands and also the United States, it's spreadsheet, it's profit-driven design,
Yeah.
and someone needs to show them. But there are people like the Classic Planning Institute trying to do this, that you can
Yeah.
actually build, have spreadsheets that work with the traditional,
Yeah. Yeah. They
but
do
they don't
amazing
know.
work. Yeah.
they don't know that that's possible.
Yeah, that's the biggest. Yeah.
But I think we need to actually get new building. We need, one thing I'm thinking of doing actually is an attachment index, a non-conscious attachment index.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can,
That sounds good.
your brain, your brain can do that in Venice. Your brain can't do that around the modern parts of Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Or the modern sprawl, and it makes you more stressed. It makes you less likely to walk, which is what you need to do. And we need to get rid of the car centrism. But I think in Europe they're doing that pretty well. But amazingly enough, in Los Angeles too, I don't know if you've been there, but I was there in November. This is hysterical. They brought back the 19th century train lines in the 21st century.
Wow.
And now they have an amazing metro, which you can take. It's really cheap, cleaner than any metro in Boston. And it can take you throughout most of LA. But it's funny, I saw some old colleagues that I used to know in LA. I met up with them. They never take it because they're not used to it. But they put in billion dollars.
In Kansas, they brought the streetcar back in Kansas. And it works. People love it. And the inner city was actually, they levied a small tax on inner city revenue, and people said like, yeah, we're going to do it. We are in favor. They voted for it. So it was a democratic decision, and they're already extending it. So
people are starting to see that, but they need to have funding for it. The country in the United States needs to really pivot to start funding it, because public transit is expensive, but they don't realize that not doing it, we all pay a cost. That's the issue.
Yeah. Oh, in 2 or 3 years, we'll have self-driving cars making, which will turn everything upside down once again. I mean, they'll probably be electric, but yeah.
In Los Angeles, they're already on the street. The self-driving cars, they terrify me. The self-driving cars, and they also had self-driving carts on the sidewalk.
Oh, seriously?
And it just
self-driving like carts, delivery vehicles, or
yes, there's there's very small self-driving cars, and then they had the Waymo, the self-driving cars, and it was terrifying. There'd be nobody in the front seat, in the driver's seat. Person would be in the back. LA already has it, and I was like, oh my god,
and
I'm not ready for this.
It's gonna be a lot more because I think Tesla is working on it as well, but I think. One problem at a time. I mean, the one thing it could solve is parking requirements in inner city areas, because if your car can just park itself outside of the city, you can reuse all that space in the city. But maybe I should actually invite someone about this topic to talk about this, because it would be interesting to have their view on kind of like the mesh between this futuristic either dystopia or utopia or whatever we want to call it, with urbanism. But
reach out to Justin Hollander if you want.
Oh yeah,
you could reach out to him. He's an urban planning professor. He'd be happy to talk to you. And but look, there's so much we could talk about, Ruben, and I'd love to continue working with you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure working with you and talking with you. And I think people will love this episode. So thank you so much for this wonderful conversation today. And I will also say, everybody, get the new Routledge Handbook. Can you tell the exact title again?
It's called the Routledge Handbook of Neuroscience in the Built Environment. Exactly.
That's it. Get it. Put it on your desk as your Bible, because we need to speed up this change towards an age where we think about human biology and our health first. So if you're an architect, get this book and make sure to think about what unifies us, and that is our health and how we react to the environment.
And how we need each other. We need to be together.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's probably the second point. Create places where we can come together, where we feel connected instead of disconnected. I think that's a wonderful mission.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anne.
Okay, well, let's talk soon.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. If you enjoyed this interview, you want to learn more about how to create these environments that our bodies respond well to, how to create cities that are inspiring, where you want to live, where people want to go, that accrue in value and that are timeless and loved by many, then you will love our course, The Aesthetic City Academy. Go in the description below to see more information. Thank you for now and see you in the next one.